So, should you put your money in Spokane? And if you do, how exactly should you invest it? In part 3 of our interview series, Bruce Jolicoeur discusses where the opportunities for investment are. As a matter of fact, we even venture beyond the border to our neighboring cities in Idaho. If an investor were to come in, whether a small investor or a fairly medium-sized investor, where are the growth opportunities in Spokane? Where would somebody put in their money?
Well, if some of the actions of investors over the last couple of years are an indication, the first place that people have gone to is the multifamily market. We now have investors coming in from certainly region-wide and to some degree nationwide, buying existing multifamily developments and buying the very nicest ones that we have. And they are not shy to pay gigantic prices. Historically, we've seen sales with capitalization rates, relationship between net operating income and sales price of around 6% on some of the newer stuff. It's crept down to 5.5%. There's a recent sale at under 5%, around 4.8%. A lot of that's being driven by exceptionally low cost financing. And if you're going to finance and you're financing 70% of your price with low interest money, that's going to have an impact on your cap rate. What's happened though is the equity dividend portion of it, the investors' return on their cash has just swelled 10, 11, 12%. So you've got huge returns on your amount of invested capital, and a lot of that's coming from appreciation. The capitalization rates are on some of these newer things. I've seen rates that are below 5%, which is beginning to rival, some of the larger metro markets.
Okay. So you're saying is that at that cap rate, they're making up for it on the appreciation of the properties.
That and being able to borrow money at exceptionally low interest rates.
And low interest rates, okay.
We see that Jim Franks is now purchasing land in the old Kaiser facility near the new Costco on the north side to build new housing. And he is a very pragmatic guy. Part of his ability to succeed has been the fact that he looks very hard at what the medium income levels are, understands what housing has to be priced at so people can afford it, and then builds a significant component of his new housing into that market.
Okay.
So that's been why he's been so successful. And builders, I don't think many builders have done the arithmetic quite as well.
Now that you mention it, I kind of tend to agree. I wasn't sure what the factors are, to be honest with you. But as you know, D.R. Horton came into town, a couple of years back. But their houses tend to be on the higher side. And I don't know what the limitations are, why they couldn't build lower cost housing. Do you have any feedback or input to that?
I think part of it is really the cost of a lot has gotten so much higher than it used to be. And the cost of the house and the cost of the lot tend to be in proportion to one another. Whether it's a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 relationship. I think if they see they're paying $70,000 for a lot, they feel they've got to be, at a $400,000 price point for a house or something like that. But there is still some ability to build a little less costly housing. I think we're going to see more common wall housing, maybe some townhouse style housing. I don't know that we're going to see condominiums come back in any great speed. Spokane's never been a great condo town. It's usually been in a 10-year real estate cycle. It's been a great condo town for about 18 months in any 10-year period.
Okay.
Right as the market gets fully charged, right before there's a recession or an adjustment of some sort.
Okay.
Coeur d'Alene's the same way. Coeur d'Alene is now a $300 a square foot house is not unusual in Coeur d'Alene. A $400 a square foot house is not unusual in Coeur d'Alene. Those are gigantic numbers.
I know that when we first moved into the area, it was not expensive in Idaho. I mean, Spokane was higher. And then I don't know when exactly it turned around, probably only in the last, 3 years, 5 years, that it flipped, right? Now it's more expensive in Idaho.
It is more expensive, and Idaho is Dave Black tells me Idaho is a rock star right now.
It's a rock star.
They really have a cachet nationwide. It's a beautiful place. You can't argue that.
Right. Right.
Some of it may be the desire to get to what they think are less populated areas. Spokane has benefited from that, quite frankly.
What about other investment opportunities? Like self-storage, for example, or RV storage. Is that something that worthwhile investing into?
Self-storage has been a real sweetheart for about 5 or 6 years. We've seen huge appreciation on year to year. I've seen a couple of properties that have sold and resold just because the investor couldn't say no to such a rapid return on their money. But I've seen a couple of sales that have been in the 12 to 15% a year appreciation rate. That's not typical, but it has happened in a couple of examples. We're now seeing capitalization rates on mini storages that are creeping well below 6%, which is again just unheard of based on historical levels. They seem to be doing quite well in terms of occupancy. One of the factors that we're kind of arguing about, having a conversation about here is, what does the next self-storage look like? We're now starting to see self-storages that are essentially attendantless.
Right.
A service station. You call in, you get your code over the phone, that you give them your credit card, they let you in, you go into your unit, you rent it, you go into it, you fill it, you do everything else, you never see a human being. And that begins to a degree to push on where you build those, I think. We've seen self-storages go from being in backwoods industrial locations to being on Main and commercial locations. I've done some work in Seattle last year, and there are multi-story self-storage facilities on Aurora Avenue, and they're paying $30 a square foot to buy the land.
Wow.
I mean, those are just unheard of sorts of numbers for us.
What's typical?
Well, usually around here, we've seen prices get up to $5 to $6 a square foot. We don't build much multi-story stuff, and really, if you're going to build 3 stories of self-storage on 1 square foot of land, you can afford to pay 3 times that much in theory. Now, you've got some more construction costs, of course, and we haven't been all that accepting of multi-story stuff. Now, I say that, yet I now look at University City. The old Crescent building is now a U-Haul facility, is now self-storage. I look at the Kmart down the street at Havana, is now self-storage. I look at a building that I saw get built as Travelers Insurance. Then it became C-First credit card processing, then Bank of America credit card processing. And that's out off of Russell Road and I-90 on the West Plains. And it's now a U-Haul self-storage facility. So we do accept some multi-story inside heated sorts of stuff. But I wonder now if you don't, I think the reason why some of these self-storages went to such high price locations is visibility, and some of it's convenience. But if you're doing an attendant-less facility, is visibility as important as it might have once been? I wonder.
Okay.
We may see facilities moving towards secondary sites again and getting off the primary commercial sites.
Okay. Are we not overbuilding self-storage?
The numbers don't suggest so yet, but I do feasibility studies on self-storages.
Yeah.
And one of the quotients that is always interesting is how many square feet of self-storage per 1,000 people are there in a community. And we and Kootenai County, Idaho in particular, seem to be breaking out of those numbers, meaning that we've got far more square footage per 1,000 than many other communities have. So it does begin to create the environment where you think you could be overbuilt. I remember back when self-storages were first built, they were built as a way to inventory land until you could put the land to good use.
Oh, okay.
That's not what it is anymore. They are their own property type.
So that's the end of our discussion meant for investors. But what if you're not into investments? What if you're a residential buyer, whether you're a first home buyer or perhaps you're downsizing as an empty nester? From a high-level bird's eye view, what are the growth areas in Spokane that you can choose from to settle in? Well, that's the subject of our next Part 4 episode. We'll see you there.